Hello. It's another day in quarantine. Real Sankara Hours. Real Sankara Hours. Follow us at Sankara Hours on Twitter. Subscribe to our Patreon, patreon.com/Real Sankara Hours. Also for our RSS feed, go on our Podbean, realsankarahours.podbean.com. You can get all our stuff from there, get our RSS feed and all that. Yeah, we're gonna kind of sort of somewhat shoot the shit, but I mean, we have some topics to talk about. Obviously, uh, one of the big major things in the news is the outright murder of Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia, and some of the, I guess, MAGA protests to open up the country, and all that. So we're just gonna talk about that and like maybe
Just another week in America.
yeah,
We're back to form, baby.
yeah. I'm Adam Hudson. Follow me at AdamHudson5 on Twitter.
And this is Peter MGunn. Follow me at MGunnPeter. So yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, I will give a primer. So right before we were recording, I just saw this. So Ahmaud Arbery, he was a 25-year-old black man who there is a video released of two white men, Gregory Michael, age 64, and Gregory McMichael. I forgot the Mick part. Gregory McMichael, age 64, and Travis McMichael, 34. So this is father son. Basically, they just shot this young man when he was jogging. This happened in Georgia, Brunswick, Georgia. So I guess that's like, apparently it's between Savannah and Jacksonville. It's between Savannah, Georgia, and Jacksonville, Florida. So southern Georgia. So
man, southern Georgia. Oh
yeah,
I don't think there's any part of the country that scares me more than rural Georgia.
Yeah. So they shot and killed him in February. Apparently, what they said was that there's, I guess, some robberies in the area. So they saw Ahmaud jogging past some construction sites. So they thought he was suspicious. So they got their guns, the pistol and shotgun, and shot him to death. And there was a dash cam video, I guess, recording of these two men just fucking murdering him. Like, it was cold-blooded murder. And the video is enough because it's like, so today, right before we started recording, just an hour ago, Gregory McMichael and Travis McMichael have been arrested and charged with murder. But this happened in February, so it took 3 months. Also, another thing, Gregory McMichael is a former cop and an investigator with the local DA's office. So that's part of the reason why it took so long for the family to find justice.
I'm sure that whole case is going to be handled perfectly. I'm sure it's not going to get botched in any regard.
Oh yeah, there's absolutely going to be justice, because if there's one thing we know about the American justice system is that it always gets justice for unarmed black people who are killed at the hands of police officers and white vigilantes. That always happens. So I even before, I mean, this is we're recording this May 7th, 2020, Thursday. They were just it was just announced today that they're arrested and charged with murder. But even before that, like, some people were saying, like, wait for the facts and investigate. But if you see that video, it's just clear, cold-blooded murder. And there is a bonus episode we did where I talked about my racist neighbor calling the cops on me for no fucking reason. So when I saw that video, I was pretty shaken up, and like, it just reminded me of that incident. And it's just, another reminder of how unsafe black people are in America, no matter where you're at. Even though this is Georgia, like, it could happen in California, it can happen anywhere. So like, there's no reason to, like, investigate. This is cold-blooded racial terrorism. I mean, this is basically another lynching, essentially, without the actual rope. But it just
Yeah, and that's I mean, I didn't watch the video precisely for that reason, because that shit just makes I like, I feel like I'm a pretty morbid person, but even still watching that shit just I mean, it's like snuff. It's literally watching a snuff film, and the whole thing about like this being a modern day lynching, that's not like a metaphor. It's not even. I mean, it is just a lynching. Like it's an extrajudicial killing that is like carried out in public. It's just that now the whole point of lynching was that it was a public spectacle, and people would like take their fucking picnic baskets out to it and shit, and now nobody really goes on picnics, so instead we make it a viral video to be played over and over again. It always strikes me as like some form of ritualistic sacrifice. And it is like, like there are like cops have told black people when they're trying to intimidate them that they'll make them a hashtag, right? So this is like, I mean, this is pure America. I get the feeling that like, John McMaster and son come from like a long, proud line of, I'm just going to say it, nigger killers, because first of all, McMaster, that's pure Scots Irish rural Georgia, right? Those are the
McMichael, technically.
McMichael, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, who cares about their name? I mean, technically that's their name, but
it's like, son, you got your first one. I know you're millennial, so you're like, it's taking you a while to grow up, but we finally did it together, right? And then they probably had a beer or something, and and then he probably fucked the shit out of his wife, because apparently murder like makes you really virile. I learned that from a documentary about police shootings. So
wait, what documentary?
I think it's called "Do Not Resist." That one will shake you up if you haven't, like, if for some reason you don't hate the system of policing enough in America, watch that one.
So we'll see what happens. I have no optimism that there's going to be anything close to justice with this, because I was telling you, Peter, before we recorded, it reminds me of the Botham Jean case in Texas. So, when he was a young black man in his own fucking home, and this white woman who's a police officer went into his apartment. She claimed she thought it was her own, and then she shot him when he was basically eating fucking ice cream. And then, so, like, there's this whole process that I think we've been going through, right? So, unarmed black person gets killed by a cop or a vigilante, right? And then there's like outrage. People are like, this is an outrage. How can this happen in America? Like, oh my God. And a lot of guilty white people are like, oh my God, like, I can't believe this is happening. What can I do? I'm going to keep them in my thoughts and blah, 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 blah. And like, yes, hashtag remember the name. It's like, okay, everyone remembers the name. All right. And with Botham Jean, people remember the name. The case got to court, went to court, went through the whole entire procedure, justice system, right? So Amber Geiger was convicted of, I think it was like 5 to 7 years. And then people are like, okay, like justice is, we got something. We got, like, we find the justice system finally got a police officer accountable for killing a black person. Yeah. And then what happens now with Ahmaud Arbery, same thing. And it's like, here's the thing, is like, we can't always expect to get full justice for black people through the justice system, because these kinds of killings are routine. They're systematic. They're incredibly normalized, and they've been normalized in America since the days of slavery. So it was normal during slavery. It's basically, this kind of racial violence and terrorism is a form of control and subjugation of black people. That's basically it. So expecting the justice system, which, again, was like, when black people came here to America as slaves, we're not the ones who really built the institution of American justice in America, right? So there's a lot of systemic racism in the justice system built into it for a very specific reason. So this idea that we can rely just on the legal system to achieve justice for cases like this when unarmed black people are killed by police and vigilantes, like I think people got to stop thinking that, because even if you do get justice, like in the case of Botham Jean, technically there was accountability. I mean, you can debate.
I mean, she got 10 years, and also the guy who testified then was mysteriously killed the next week.
Right. Yeah. So even if you go through the justice system and there is, again, accountability, that's not going to stop these killings from happening in the first place, right? Because that's really the question, is like, how do you prevent the killings from happening in the first place?
Well, Adam, I would say that you sound very cynical about this whole situation, but did you know that Joe Biden himself has called for justice? So actually, I think it's going to be okay this time.
Yeah. I was just having this discussion with a friend of mine who basically said just that, and I'll give my response. What I said was that I said Biden's not going to do shit. What I said, first of all,
he literally can't, because he doesn't have any power right now.
Right? Yeah, he has no power. But my point is that, like, one, I think Biden is pandering, right? Because he has. I mean, first of all, he has a very, very credible sexual assault allegation against him, and more evidence keeps coming out. So there's that. And he also, like, him and the Democratic Party, like. This is kind of veering off topic from Arbery, but I really want to know, like, how the fuck they're going to handle that situation, because
they're just going to ignore it.
Yeah. So I think, like, there's that, like, he's trying to, like, this is the way to kind of, like, turn the spotlight away from what his fuck ups, to show, like, hey, I'm still a good person. I still believe in justice and blah blah blah. Okay, Bo, do you believe in justice for the woman who has very credible allegation of sexual assault against you? So I think there's that. So I think there's clear pandering. But also, even if, again, you go through the system, let's say, okay, Biden becomes president, and he is just like, God fucking damn it. This is an outrage. He won't say God fucking damn it. I'm hyperbole. He'll be like, this is a bunch of malarkey. Like, ooh, this is such malarkey. I can't believe this sassafras blah 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 happened in America. We need justice and da da da. And so, like, after Black Lives Matter, what happened is, like, okay, the DOJ investigates. So they investigate. What did the DOJ investigate? Well, they already told us what we know, which is that the police are racist and there's systemic racist violence. Okay, wow. Yeah. Well, we already know that. So there's that.
Unless you're gonna put, like, literally every police department in the country under a consent decree and make them all, like, not just fake civilian oversight, but actually, like, civilian run. Like, that's the only thing I can possibly think of that, like, could, like seriously solve the problem while keeping any semblance of the American political system intact.
So Obama, actually, to his credit, he did put a few police departments under consent decrees, but the problem is that once Trump got in office, Jeff Sessions just basically ripped it up. So even if there is a consent decree, the next administration could easily rip it up. So, like, okay, there has to be something, like, more deeper systematic change. And by systematic change, like, I would say, like, actual revolutionary change, in the way that, like, it replaces one social order with a different social order, right? Replaces the systematically racist social order with a systematically anti-racist social order. And the process to transition from one social order to another, a lot of people are going to get uncomfortable, because a lot of people's livelihoods rely on the system of racism being intact. So they're not going to give it up easily. So, like, just by relying on the system to mete out some form of justice and get the real kind of justice you need, that's not going to be enough, because you're going to need fundamental change that a lot of people don't want, because, again, their livelihoods depend on that system being in place.
Yeah, and beyond just, like, the political structure, I mean, the kind of, like, the social relations that are encapsulated in that one case are, like, years upon years of, what I think is, like, the sort of most American phrase, concept, and the one that sort of gets to the root of all things is like self-deputized, right? Is the idea that like patriotic law-abiding citizens can deputize themselves to become enforcers of the law, you know, even when they're not being officially employed by the state to do so. And this is, you know, or even if they are literally cops, right? But when they're not, you know, on duty or whatever, they still have that mentality. And it is like the mentality of you personally, you human being, you know, idiot, scared. I mean, like, you're obviously a bad person in the first place by thinking this way, but also just like any random human can like self-deputize themselves and, you know, to go enforce. And whenever America needs self-deputized people, it's always to do death squad shit. I mean, that's what the Texas Rangers were. When they were formed, they were a death squad. I mean, you know, like slave patrols, right? Like, those were, you know, people who took it upon themselves to enforce the order. And the other thing that I think is always very instructive is that a lot of, you know, what crime did they think he was accused of, right? Robbery, right? It is property, you know, that Americans are always willing to kill somebody over, which was always something that like made me very spooked to live here at all, is that like the idea that like you can kill someone for being on, you know, some piece of land, right? It's always property. And that is because, you know, we are basically an alien form. I mean, white America is an alien form in the sense that it doesn't really belong on this piece of land. That's true. And, you know, they know that deep down inside. And the only way they've ever been able to stay here is through sheer violence. So,
yeah, I excellent point, Peter. And just to I want to recommend 2 books, since we're on quarantine and we got plenty of time to read. So, Apocalypse of Settler-Colonialism by Dr. Gerald Horne. Dr. Gerald Horne is a very excellent Black historian. And then also Our Enemies in Blue, Police and Power in America by Christian Williams. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my bookshelf just to get the name right. But those are, you know, if you want to read more about this kind of stuff, I would definitely recommend reading those 2 books, because this kind of this white vigilante violence and police violence are deeply embedded into the fabric of America, which is white supremacy, settler colonialism, and like hyper capitalism, right? So like, you know, the obsession over protecting private property, which is built on stolen indigenous land, right? And a lot of times, like the property was used to for plantations, right? So all this stuff is interconnected. So like when people are talking about systematic racism, like, you know, it is systematic, but like it has deep historical roots. And I think even I would say like kind of the like those are sort of like the consistent animating principles of America, which is like, you know, white supremacy, settler colonialism, and capitalism. So like if you understand those things as like very consistent principles that animate the overall social order and body politic of America, a lot of the things that happen like this case of Arbery being just murdered in cold blood, it makes sense in the sense that like it's not just that one individual instant of a Black person being killed, but it's part of like a longer trajectory of anti-Black violence, anti-indigenous violence. So again, that's what I'm saying, like just relying on the system to mete out that justice is not going to be enough. I also want to share, before I forget, this great tweet thread by Bree Newsom, because I think she provides some like refreshing clarity compared to a lot of other commentary I've been seeing about this stuff. So she said, this is a May 5th tweet thread. So she said, I've said this before, but I firmly believe that the recent popularity of circling videos and images of black people being murdered by police and vigilantes and then having a public debate about what we all witnessed is a modern form of white people sharing mementos from lynchings. The purpose is not to seek racial justice, but to soothe the racist psyche of white America by providing confirmation that USA's legal institutions still recognize and protect whiteness as a privileged social class. It also serves to remind black people of our place in the social order. This is the entire purpose of public displays of racial violence against black people. This includes recent incidents of black people being forced to cut their hair in the push to reopen the economy in the midst of a pandemic that disproportionately kills black laborers. So I think like I like that because like because again like there, particularly during Black Lives Matter, even in the press, I think there was some hope that, okay, if there are more these videos of black people being killed, then that could awaken the collective consciousness of America, particularly white America, to do something, right? Because previously, these kinds of acts of police and vigilante terrorism were not videotaped. So it's always like, okay, black people's word against white people's word, right? And so like when you go to get justice, okay, they'll just stack the juries full of white people, so the white people are going to believe another white person against a black person, and then no justice is going to get done. So by having, okay, like a video, it provides like, okay, some objective evidence of like something clearly wrong happened, right? So I think like particularly after like Oscar Grant and Trayvon Martin and Black Lives Matter, I think like there is some hope that like, okay, by sharing these videos, like this can actually spur some action. But what happens is the opposite. What happens is that people just got desensitized to the videos.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there's a difference between like back in when Jet magazine showed pictures of Emmett Till's open casket funeral. I mean, first of all, that was in Jet magazine, which was for a black audience. It wasn't, the New York Times wasn't showing it. They weren't showing it on ABC News every night, right? So,
yeah,
you know, but the other thing was always like the sort of disingenuousness of, you know, the powers that be, that were always like, well, yes, I mean, it's like, given America's history, which they all know, it's like, okay, well, I think we basically have a pretty good understanding of what the dynamics of the situation were. But they were always like, well, we just don't know, you know, unless there's video proof. Because you know, black people tend to lie about everything, right? So they could just be making it up, which was always like, I always thought that was weird when white people were just like, no, black people are just making up, you know, centuries of oppression. You're not being oppressed, and I'll kill you if you say anything about it, about how you're being oppressed, because you're not, right? It's like, you know, yeah, like when CNN would just show the Eric Garner video like every hour or something, right? That was not like that, you know, that kind of stuff was not like, oh, you know, people need to see the brutality of what happened. That was, oh, wow, you know, check it out. You know, this is like that was making it a public spectacle for consumption. That's not the same thing as what Jet magazine did in 1955.
Yeah. No, I think I'm glad you made the distinction. Yeah. Yeah, because I think at this point, we're past like, let's share the videos, let's do a hashtag of the name, and it's like at some point it feels very like there's something kind of morbid about it. Like, okay, the only way we can get justice for dead black people is to share a video of them being killed, and then just remembering their name and turning. So it's like, you know, so it's like, okay, like every black person that gets killed just gets reduced to a hashtag. Like it's like the humanity gets ripped out, right?
Yeah.
I remember one time, this is years ago, I was this is actually when I met Erica Garner before she passed away, but there was an event in Oakland. This is back in, I think, like 2015. I was doing a story for Truth Out. You know, it was about families of police violence victims. So Uncle Bobby, who's the uncle of Oscar Grant, he was there. Erica Garner was there. Another woman was there, whose son was murdered by San Francisco Police Department, and she broke down crying. Like, she broke down crying, and she's like, "I lost my son." Like, she was talking and talking, and then she just broke down crying, and the other families needed to comfort her. And like, I remember seeing it, I almost broke out in tears, because I just couldn't. Like, I couldn't, like, even as a reporter, like, you're supposed to be a little bit more like objective and clinical, but like, that was one moment where I was just like, my my feelings as a black person, like, it just, like, yeah, like that, like, this is really fucked up. Like, I saw my mother in her. And then when I was talking to her and I asked her about who her son was and what his life was, like, she kind of lit up, and she was really happy to talk about her son's life. Like, how, like, he was basically like your average guy in his late 20s. Like, he liked video games, and he, and so, I think about that, and it's like, I think about all these hashtag names of dead black people we're supposed to remember. It's like, you just took out a human being, like someone who had a life, had dreams, aspirations, likes, dislikes, even their own human faults. Like, we all are, like, humans. We have our faults, we have our imperfections. They have their good sides and they have their imperfections. Like, all of the things that make someone a human being, a living, breathing, complex, nuanced human being, all that's gone. And it just gets reduced to, they're just a hashtag, you're just a dead body on a camera, or you're just seeing a black body get beat up by the police. And sometimes I get tired of black bodies, because I think sometimes when people overuse the term black body, you internalize it, so you just see black people's bodies, not as humans. And and that's like, where I'm at right now with this, with Arbery, because it's like, like, this is someone who was a human being just like everybody else, like you, me.
He was going out for his jog, right?
Yeah, I jog. I went jogging today. I was on the cross country team and track team in high school, and I still go jogging. So it's like, oh, now I have to be afraid of fucking going jogging in my own damn neighborhood? Is that where we're at? I mean, well, technically that's where we always were, but he was doing a normal human activity. By the way, a human activity that typically gets associated with gentrifying white people in urban neighborhoods. Like, imagine like a white person.
That's why they were suspicious of it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because imagine a white person in, like, fucking Oakland, or imagine a white person in West Oakland, right? Because West Oakland's getting gentrified. A white person in West Oakland near, like, a construction space. And let's say some black people are like, huh, this white person looks suspicious, and then they pull out their guns and then they shoot the white person. Like, I mean, the reaction to that would be a lot swifter, right? Like, the justice system would have reacted a lot quicker to that. So clearly, it's like the justice system, the way it's constructed, as Bree Newsom pointed out, that is meant to protect whiteness as a social class.
Well, you white people wouldn't even wait for the justice system. I mean, they would start they would, form their neighborhood watches and just start storming the place.
Yep.
Yeah, there are two things that I think about. One is, I remember one time, because I do this kind of stuff. I was looking on the, like, famous Aquarius like website where they, like, list all the people who were born in February. And, like, one of them was Trayvon Martin, and I was like, I mean, I guess, it's weird to see him as, like, a notable person, right? Because it's like, he didn't, it was, I don't know, that sat with me, because it is like, it's like these people become, spectacles, and, like, it is in death that, like, they become noteworthy or something, right? And I think that's very much, it ties in. We've been talking, like, to each other about Afro-pessimism and, sort of, like what that means and sort of coming around back to it or something. And like the central thesis of Afro-pessimism, which is that like blackness equals social death, is something that like there is definitely some truth to that being a strain in the American psyche, where black people especially are, America doesn't place the highest value on human life overall, but black people especially, it is like to be black and to actually live, for yourself, to just be alive in the fullest sense is something that can't be allowed. And so the people who demonstrate, that often then have to be killed in sort of a public spectacle way, right? And there has to be this understanding that like, and there doesn't have to be, I think in some ways it has outstripped any actual political economic function. And it's just like, this is something that has to exist for America to be able to tell the story it tells itself, is that like, because it was always just like, oh, that's just the way black people are. It's always like, oh no, they just want to live in the ghetto, right? Yeah. That they want to live like that. They do this, they do that to themselves. They kill each other because that's just how they are. And it's never like the set of historical circumstances and processes that create those situations are never interrogated, but at the same time, like they have to constantly be reinscribed in order to keep the system at large ongoing. So, it's hard in an era when like we're supposed to embrace multiculturalism and, be against racism, but to then keep a system of white supremacy going. So we have to so America's figured out a way to be a little bit smarter about it, I guess, but still keep that underlying, necessary undercurrent of violence that serves. I mean, it is, I always say like, all the white people who are afraid of like living under totalitarianism. I mean, like white supremacy is a totalitarian system.
Exactly.
So,
I mean, and then that goes back to George Jackson's point about like fascism is already here, and like especially if you're black, like you've been living under white supremacist fascism since the slave trade, right? Like there really hasn't been any real peace for black people in the truest sense of the term since the slave trade. And yeah, I remember I was posting something and I was basically endorsing Afro-pessimism, and one of my friends was like, oh, you've gone down the Afro-pessimism route, like be prepared for flame wars. And I'm like, you know what, like fuck it, I don't I mean, people, I've been hearing a lot of like back and forth and critiques about Afro-pessimism, but like, yeah, I mean, the when I read the central thesis of it, like, it's very, very hard to dispute it. And there are so many cases like Arbery and Trayvon Martin and Oscar Grant and Troy Davis and Sandra Bland and Ayanna Jones, and I mean we can just go down a list. Like all these cases basically prove the thesis or at least the thrust of Afro-pessimism. So we might do an episode on Afro-pessimism, digging into it, but I do think like that is a political theory that I do take seriously, because I think its fundamental point is largely correct. And sometimes I think when people critique Afro-pessimism, I haven't digged into all the critiques yet, but the critiques I've seen so far almost prove its point, because like it seems like whenever black people try to articulate a very specific political subjectivity that applies directly to our needs collectively as black people, there's people get iffy about it, and it kind of proves Afro-pessimism's point, because like a lot of Afro-pessimists will say like, anytime like black people want to articulate a political subjectivity, even in groups that claim to be in solidarity with us, we get pushback. And so that's why I think like sometimes the critiques of Afro-pessimism wind up proving Afro-pessimism's point.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons people really don't like Afro-pessimism is they don't really know what to do about it. And even Wilderson himself is like, I've heard, because I knew someone who I like went to some of his lectures. He'd say like, yeah, I mean, I don't know what to do about it. I'm not here to like give you any sort of like, you know, action plan about it. It's just like, I think that this is the way that I think this is a state of affairs. And it's definitely true in the sense of like the American's imagination. And he talks about the libidinal economy, which is just like, which he doesn't, I don't know. It's been a while since I read all that stuff. But the point that I always thought was very correct is that there is very much this, you know, almost erotic. I mean, it's not almost, because of the ways in which like sexual violence is also used as a form of white terrorism. But there is, you know, it is something about like the white American psyche that is like the ability to kill black people that is somehow necessary for it to continue. I mean, it is for it to be a white American psyche. And sometimes I feel like that gets into a tautology almost, but it is true in the sense that like whiteness only has a function when it's, you know, enforcing racism. Otherwise, there's no need for it, right?
Yeah. I mean, we'll wrap up this segment of the discussion and get into the chud part, but I'll just say this just to kind of conclude my thoughts. Like I, as a Pan-Africanist, I kind of want to just say, you know, when people are talking about like, what do we do? Well, I think like, okay, so I want to sort of just briefly mention like how a lot of previous approaches to achieve justice for black people and black liberation just have not worked. Like, okay, we tried just integration, assimilation. That clearly hasn't worked because that has not prevented black death, right? And also hasn't prevented redlining, reverse redlining, gentrification, wealth gap, all that stuff, mass incarceration, on and on, right? And then also like with the pandemic, like like with our last free episode with Dr. Colette Harris. I mean, you know, black people are definitely among the groups most at risk of coronavirus, along with also Native Americans and Latinos, right? So there's that. Like, so the integration, like kind of post-civil rights integration approach has not improved the material conditions of black people in the United States. So there's that. And trying to, I think, appeal to the moral conscience of the system and of quote unquote America has not worked, because within the psyche and the systemic forces of America, like there really is no conscience, so to speak, because the system is largely predicated on black death to survive. So without fundamental change to change that reality, moral appeals aren't going to work. And that's why, you know, I think that why the sharing of dead black people on video and all this like kind of hashtag stuff, like that only goes so far, right? Because I think people are assuming that like that you can kind of make a moral appeal to people's consciousness, whereas like I think even look, I'll even say this, especially living in the Bay Area, I see this a lot. Like, you have a lot of well-meaning liberal whites, right, who are opposed to racism, quote unquote, check their privilege, all that. But at the end of the day, they're still living in gentrified neighborhoods, right? So even on that level, their way of life relies on subjugating another group of people, right? And so to change that, requires far more fundamental change than just moving into a gentrified neighborhood and saying, I'm in solidarity with people of color. Like, well, you're in a gentrified neighborhood. What are you doing to reverse that social relation? And unless you're not doing anything to constructively reverse that social relation on a material level, like, you're not doing anything. Right? So that's not working. And for me, I'm at the point, like, well, I mean, I think I've been at this point for a while, but I think it's probably among the few times I just say it openly on a podcast, so to speak. But I really think, and I'm kind of finishing up this article on Pan-Africanism that'll be up soon. But basically, I think Black people in the diaspora should take Pan-Africanism seriously. There is a great article in Foreign Policy that was written a couple years ago that I want to put in the show notes. But basically, like, you know, if we organize collectively as Black people around the world, not just Black people in the United States, but also Black people in Brazil, Latin America, and Africa, if we organize collectively under Pan-Africanism and actually, I think, have like strong African states and even the African Union, that can be beyond just like, you know, an actual kind of like cultural solidarity and psychological solidarity between Black people across the world and repealing those psychological wounds of slavery and racism. What it could do politically is give Black people collectively some actual political leverage to actually get the demands that we actually want and need to change the reality of our condition in the West. By the way, like, this doesn't get said enough, but I want to mention on this podcast, but the African Union actually recognizes the African diaspora as the 6th region. So there's 5 regions of the African Union. There's the North, the West, the East, Central Africa, and then there's Southern Africa, right? Those are 5 regions of all the 55 member states on the African continent, but the African diaspora is recognized as the 6th region. So I'll just read what it says in the African Union's website. It says, with regard to all historic migrations, forced and voluntary, so obviously forced migration would be slavery, the African Union defines the African diaspora as consisting of people of African origin living outside the continent, irrespective of their citizenship and nationality, and who are willing to contribute to the development of the continent and the building of the African Union. So I think by taking something like that seriously, having the, you know, working with the African Union and similar bodies to actually get political leverage, I think that has more of a chance of actually changing the fundamental social relations of Black people in the West, because Black people have no leverage to demand anything from the U.S. government. We don't. Like I was saying a couple episodes ago that there is no Black politics. We have no real leverage. So I think, like, you know, instead of just because I'm just at the point, like, I think the reason why I'm saying this is because I'm just sick of begging. I'm sick of, like, you know, Black people dying all the time and we have to beg. Like, just fuck begging, past begging. Like, we actually need to fight and fight constructively and get serious about politics. And I think, you know, what I would say, particularly in light of this discussion, something that's constructive, that isn't just despair, is like, if Black people are really sick of living under this kind of social death, we should be taking Pan-Africanism seriously. And that's something, like, you know, outside of my journalism, in terms of my own advocacy, that I want to focus on, because, you know, I'm at the point right now where it's like, I don't want to just write about Black people dying, because it just gets too, it just kind of hurts your soul. So, you know, I'd rather, like, do something that's, you know, more constructive. So that's just how I feel about that. Was the Arbery shooting. I wanted to get that off my chest, because I didn't want it. I get sick of, like, we go through the same thing of, like, another Black person's dead, let's talk about it, and then just, like, you know, America needs to wake up, but America's not going to wake up unless there's, like, real, like, leverage. I mean, it's just not. It's just. I mean, it's not going to happen.
Even if it wakes up, it just goes back to sleep. I mean, it doesn't, like, that whole framework is off. It's like how I remember, like, when I would go to anti-racism trainings at, like, church stuff, in a room full of white people, and you may get them to acknowledge like the reality of the situation, but they're always like, okay, well, what do we do about it? And we need like easy, clean answers such that we can solve the problem right now, because we don't like dealing with how uncomfortable it makes us. And it's like, there's nothing like there's a whole cottage industry around like policy that can be done that tweaks, outcomes, because this number is too high because Black people are only 13% of the population, so therefore they should only occupy 13% of this bad thing or whatever, right? But like, it's not an objective problem. It's not a technocratic problem. It's a subjective problem. It has to do with how Black people are seen in America, and how they are perceived and how they are treated and how they are understood, right? That is something that can only be changed with, a total rupture in the set of historical and social relations, which is to say,
exactly,
basically a revolution.
Yeah.
Without getting into like the specifics of that, right? But it is, there's nothing like we've had 30 fucking years of, white papers and NGOs and all that shit, of well-meaning liberals trying to solve the problem. But, like the real settlers just see that as another culture war and another thing that they can then rebel against for fun. I mean, it's fun for these people, right? They're not threatened ever. They're never actually threatened by us. It's always just like a thing that they like to do because it makes them feel good about themselves, which should show like in how incredibly sick they are, because like it's funny to them. So our existence is funny to them, and that's why It's funny if they kill us.
Yeah, and like and even like on the news, it's like, getting a Black commentator on to cry on TV, and like a well-meaning white liberal is like crying and agreeing with them. It's like, okay, yeah, like white people can acknowledge what the problem is, Black people can cry, but that's not going to change anything. And I think we just need to get fucking serious about that. It's not like, because I'm just at the point where it's like, I'm tired of like begging and like all these other kind of performances. It's like, okay, like we need to actually talk about how the fuck we're actually going to change something. And I do think like, Pan-Africanism and revolutionary change, I don't think those two are, mutually exclusive. But like, if we're going to have fundamental change, we have to get serious. And I do think one of the first things is getting organized and having actual leverage. Black people have no leverage, period. If we had leverage, we could do something to actually force a change within the system to actually get some real justice. But hashtags, all that stuff is not leverage. It's not. Like, videos of Black death, that's not leverage. Hashtags are not leverage. Awareness raising and nonprofits. Look, I don't want to besmirch all the work of nonprofits, because like there are some nonprofits that do good work and do like really good serious work, but the whole like nonprofit industrial complex that exists, that's not working. Okay.
I mean all the people who aren't grifters that in nonprofits know exactly what we're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah.
The harshest critiques I've seen from nonprofits come from people who worked in them.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll say about this is that there is this sense of like, and it's shared among, I think, some like Black liberal class type people, of like, racism was America's original sin and we need to be redeemed for it, so then we can make America whole and heal it, and then everything will be okay. Which is like not my concern. It's not like
it's not mine either.
The idea that America can do one thing to solve this particular problem in isolation, outside of the larger questions of capitalism, settler colonialism, and imperialism, is wrong. It's just not based in reality. And, so there's nothing, like, all of it's tied up. There's nothing that you can do such that, like, Black, even reparations, right? It's not, it's just not economically possible under this form of capitalism, right? It's, so the idea, so anytime people like inveigh against racism with the idea of like wanting to heal America or, you know, solve America's race problem, as though that's all that it is. It's just a race problem or whatever. Like they're not really being serious, I guess. They're not really understanding the actual reality of the situation.
And also, like, trying to solve America's race problem, like, it almost indirectly implies that black people are the problem, right? Like, it casts, like, black people as a group as a problem. And also, like, I don't think black people are particularly obligated to save America because we didn't choose to come here. Like, we're the only group of people who didn't choose to come here, right? So why is it our obligation to save a nation that we were forcibly taken to? I think that if you're going to be saving, it's like, okay, maybe... I don't even like the rhetoric of saving. Like, fuck the whole saving shit. Like, we need to be free. That's basically it. Like, we need to actually think about what freedom and black liberation actually looks like. And I also think that you know, black liberation, that can go in tandem with other liberation struggles, right? That can go in tandem with the struggle for workers, right? And the struggle against other forms of oppression, right? But I do think that, like, you know, black liberation, like that should be the framework, is black liberation. I don't think, like, you know, black people have to shoulder this special responsibility to save America because we have enough fucking shit on our shoulders.
Yeah, it's stupid. I don't, you know, or liberation and self-determination. I think that's that's really the key for me is, you know, if blackness is to have salience as a political identity, it has to be in the struggle for self-determination.
Yeah.
So,
we're at 50 minutes. We said we would talk about the gun-toting MAGA chuds, so we can just talk about that
real quick. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to say beyond. Yeah, I mean, a lot of them are the same people, and it is the same. Just like it's just pure America. Like it's just like never ever thinking about the consequences of your actions. That's because America's never had to face any consequences for anything it's done. I mean, we took over an entire continent, and then we, you know, basically took over the world system of finance capital. And for every terrible thing we've done, no one's ever held us to account for anything. So why would, you know, pure settlers ever have to really think about the consequences of anything they want that is seen as like a key feature of American life?
Actually, I want to bring this up just to frame it. And I want to get your thoughts on this, Peter, because I think this is related to what we're talking about. A lot of I've seen a lot of people like make the hypocrisy / white privilege argument against these. So basically, just to catch people up to speed, so there was a group of protesters. They were like just basically MAGA types. There is also a group of people in Fresno, but you know, even though a majority of the country supports the shelter-in-place policies and the quarantining, but to basically, you know, people don't want to get sick, right? The coronavirus is still out there. It's still serious. California's made some progress in flattening the curve, so to speak. This is actually just one bit of good news, which my county, Contra Costa County, now has free coronavirus testing, including drive-through. So that's a good thing. So, but like the virus is still out there. We're still dealing with it. People are still getting it. There's still people dying. America's still like probably like the worst place to be in the world when it comes to COVID-19 because we have like the highest number of cases. I believe
we've really outdone ourselves.
Yeah, America's #1 at coronavirus. Yeah.
We're #1 in everything, baby.
Yeah. So most people I think realize like, okay, they don't want to get sick, right? So most people I think are reasonable to be like, yeah, we don't want to get sick. So most people support the shelter in place policies. But now like there's a, you know, push by particularly right-wing politicians in the South to open up the country for business, which seems very weird because even under that logic, a lot of people probably aren't going to go out because, again, like people are just scared to go out and catch the virus. But so there's like this group of protesters who are just like, I'll call them MAGA chuds. I actually know someone who is among them. He's, I don't want to say his name, but like he's a musician I know. He moved back home to Wisconsin, and like he's all like tea partied, don't tread on me, snake.
It really bugs me that Republicans are allowed to play music. It seems like they shouldn't be.
Yeah, like he is just. I was talking to some musician friends of mine, and a lot of them are like kind of shaking their head, like, dude, what the fuck happened to you? Because no one really expected it. But so like I'll just call them like just mostly white people, MAGA chuds, with fucking in Michigan. They stormed the Michigan Capitol with fucking guns and rifles to take over the Capitol to open up the state, and there were. So people were saying
they gotta culturally appropriate even when they're trying to be racist.
That's exactly what people were pointing out. Like, so people are like, oh, when the Black Panther Party went to storm Oakland City Council in protest,
it was the state capital of California.
Yeah, like so
in Sacramento.
Yeah, so it's like Sacramento. And then I think this is probably for one of the cases of but you see images of like the Black Panther Party out state capitol, public spaces with shotguns and shit like that. So people are like, oh, okay, well, when the Black Panthers did it, the Republicans decided to do gun control. But now when these Republican white people are doing it, it's okay. That's hypocrisy, white privilege. And Peter, what's your reaction? Because I have some thoughts. I have some critiques of that framework.
These people, I mean, it is hypocritical, but hypocrisy has never mattered. Like
ding.
These are not people who have shame or like the whole point is that like the liberal notions of like civilized behavior or whatever like mean nothing to them. So the idea that like they have to have a consistent position on anything that is not just like whatever I want, what I want when I want it, which shout out to Pizza Hut training manual is they tell us like that's the customer like idea that we always need to satisfy is I want what I want when I want it. Yeah, they just don't like it doesn't matter to them, or you're like, oh well, you hated when Kaepernick protested, and they'd be like, I mean, some of them might be dumb enough to argue like, well, that's different because he was at his job, like. Or whatever, but that's that's not the same thing, and you're just making shit up, and these are people who love to obfuscate. So these are the kinds of people you can't argue with them, you can't reason with them, because it's not it's rational in a way, but like it's not rational based on any values you hold. So right. Yeah, there's no like you can't debate these people in good faith. They do what they want to do because they can do it.
Yeah, it's all about power. I mean, and people taught like the privilege checking of these people and like the charge of hypocrisy. It's like, yeah, I agree. Like my response, like the way I felt was like, the way I feel is like those kinds of frameworks basically miss the point and they don't illuminate anything, because fundamentally, like, because I think like these protesters, if you were to kind of categorize them in any way, because like these aren't really like disgruntled workers who are desperate, because there is a real crisis when it comes to the economy. Yeah. Like we're at 33 million unemployed. People aren't like, this stimulus bill was basically just a slush fund for Wall Street, so people are not getting the relief, the economic relief. So there is that crisis, right? And I would also say like that economic crisis is going to become more acute than the public health crisis, because as the months goes on, I think like in terms of actual medical and health research, we will be able to tackle this virus a lot better. But I think the bigger fallout we're probably going to feel for maybe 2 or 3 years after this is the economic fallout, because we're basically in a Great Depression. So there is like a need for real economic relief. Well, go ahead.
Well, I mean, the push to open up isn't about getting the economy back, quote unquote. It's about getting people off unemployment.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is going to happen to me, I think, starting in June. And it's like, but it's so fucking dumb, because it's like, to do it properly, like for the place I work at, it's just like your standard bar/restaurant. I mean, it's really a bar, but we call it a restaurant. Like the amount of you have to basically operate at half capacity, and you know, if you're being safe, which I mean a lot of places aren't, and you know, like everyone has to wear masks, including the servers, and people don't want to fucking eat out and that kind of shit. So you're not really gonna be, and it's like, yeah, you're not really making any money when you're open. It's just like an excuse to get people off unemployment.
Yeah.
That's
and also like if there was real like economic relief, what we would do is like, okay, have like universal basic income, have that. And also cancel rent and mortgage payments. So we could do actual economic relief to make things easier for people, but we're not doing that. And certainly this stimulus bill does not fucking have it. And sure as fuck, the Democrats are not fighting for that. Like when it comes to like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and their agenda, like they're not pushing for UBI or rent cancellation or any of that.
Yeah, I don't know. I heard Chuck Schumer is gonna unveil something that's Rooseveltian in nature. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
I mean, they're not gonna. They're like I don't really care like what the Democrats are fighting for in the sense, because it's like it's not gonna pass,
right?
Like, so you know, but it is also like, yeah, it's like businesses get PPP money, and so like you have to subsidize the business to subsidize. And then they pay like their employees with that, even though like the business isn't really making enough to be profitable. And it's so dumb because it's like, why not just give the money directly to workers? But you can't allow that. You literally just can't allow workers to get that notion in their head. It's kind of like I was thinking about, you know, in the brief period when it seemed like Bernie Sanders could actually win. And it was like, yeah, well, you know, if workers just vote in their own self-interest, they realized, you know, then we could just do this. We could just get all this shit just by voting for it. And I was like, oh, wait a second. They're not falling for that one.
Yeah.
You think we can just vote all this stuff in? Come on.
Right. And like, I mean, you know, and at this point, it's like, if there's any time to pass Medicare for all, it's now in terms of public support. But, you know, yeah, they're not going to let workers get that crazy idea of like, oh, wait, we could have nationalized health care.
We could, yeah. Or, you know, we could work and live for ourselves and not for our bosses.
Right.
You can't let people get that kind of a notion.
And also, I just read California is going to experience its worst state deficit in state history because of, you know, the pandemic. And so it's like, I'm worried as someone who works in education because, you know, usually in these circumstances, one of the first things on the chopping block is education. So even like, let's say there are teachers who get laid off, they're going to need relief, right? So, you know, this whole pandemic is like, if there's any time that we need actual, like, real command economy shit, central planning and massive socialism, like it's now. But anyway, like that's not really what these people are arguing. They're not arguing for that. Like they just want to open up the country for business. And so like I think the class composition is like petty bourgeoisie, because if you look at the guns they have, those are expensive, right? Yeah. So all the gear, like the ammo, sexual gear, and like the wannabe operator shit.
Fascism isn't for poor people, guys.
Right. Yeah, like they're dressing up like green berets and shit. Like they're all in like ammo-sexual fashion and shit. It's like, you know, it's just basically porno for gunfuckers at this. That's how they're dressing, right? So it's kind of like a motley crew of, I think like social Darwinists. Actually, there's this asshole in Antioch, California, which is not far from where I live. He's a planning commissioner who basically said that the virus needs to play out to take out, you know, homeless people and the elderly. Well, Antioch basically removed him from office, but it's like people like him is like his politics are very similar.
Said the quiet part out loud.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so these are the kinds of people that are, you know, who feel this way in this country. And when people are saying, you know, hypocrisy and white privilege, to basically point out the difference in response from the police toward these protesters, misses the point, because in large part the politics and the interests of the protesters are not that far removed from the politics and the interests of the police. So there's no reason to expect that the police are going to respond harshly to a group of protesters whose politics they share. And there was one picture I saw of like some one of these MAGA chuds posing with his gun, with like I think high-fiving or two police officers or something. So it's like, okay, yeah, these guys, they're on the same side. So
it's only a matter of time before one of those idiots like forgets to put the safety on, accidentally shoots a cop at one of those things. But even then, they still won't like. I mean, if that happened at a left protest, like every single leftist would be on a list and rounded up. But
so I just want to Antioch City. It was Antioch City Council in Antioch, California, and they just voted unanimously to kick out the chief planning commissioner. His name is Ken Turnage II, and he said,
"Ooh, a second."
Yeah, it was a Facebook post, and he said, "We have our old, we have our weak, and we have our drains and our resources. The virus is targeting those. The virus is targeting those sectors of our population."
I mean, I agree with getting rid of the drains on resources, aka the bourgeoisie.
Right, but he's not talking about them. And then he said, "But as species, for our nation, and as a planet, we would strengthen when all this is settled." So I think when we're talking about like these kinds of people, I think there's a confluence between this kind of extreme social Darwinism, the sort, hence which kind of intersects with the far right survivalist types who think like they're the ones who are going to survive the virus because they're white and they have guns and they have to take out the dregs of society. And especially like with zombie movies, is basically like zombie movies they're supposed to make people scared of the other, i.e. black people and Muslims and shit.
And also, yeah, I mean, big reason zombie movies are so popular is because it's like the pure right-wing fantasy of social collapse and like the ability to murder without consequences.
Right. Instead of like dealing with the situation with compassion and solidarity, their solution is, okay, let's just kill all the undesirables. So
the non-productive parts of the population.
Yeah, and so like when you look at the routine police violence against black people and brown people in this country, those two politics are not antagonistic.
Black people are tolerated if they're able to be successfully exploited, but when they start making noise about not liking that, then they can just as easily die.
Yeah. So that's I mean, we can just wrap this up, but that's pretty much
on that light note.
That's pretty much what I wanted to say about the sort of chud protesters, but I think the whole like using charges of hypocrisy and white privilege, like that's not really going to illuminate much about our situation. And I think what's becoming a lot more clear is America is a deeply racist and settler-colonial and hyper-capitalist society. And I think like those sorts of realities are becoming a lot more upfront and apparent, at least to people who, or I think it's shocking the conscience of a lot of people who believed otherwise about America. But I think if for those of you who are like us who've been paying attention to these things, like it's not too surprising, but it's still dark and shit like that. But
it's not dark; it's very white.
Yeah.
try to get out of that mentality, but it's hard.
Well, on that light note, we will end this. So follow us at Sankara Hours on Twitter, www.patreon.com/realsankarahours. Also realsankarahours.podbean.com for our RSS feed. Tell your friends about us. Subscribe if you like this episode. Subscribe because you will get double the content for $5 a month. I should also mention, just brief technical note, Patreon said that they're going to do sales taxes on patrons, which is kind of silly. But so if you donate $5 a month, your sales tax should be anywhere between, I think, 25 cents to 55 cents, depending on where you live. I think it's for like some parts of the United States. They weren't exactly clear like which state or whom would have to pay the
Right.
sales tax. But yeah, so if you chip in like $5 a month and you want to get the full content, you're gonna get a sales tax on that, anywhere from like 4% to 11%. Yeah, I just wanted to make that. I thought I'd make that technical note, especially to our patrons and anyone else who's listening. But yeah, for $5 a month, if you like this episode, you'll get our bonus episodes where we discuss theory and other fun stuff. And yeah, I think we'll be discussing Malcolm X, Bell or the Bullet, for our next. Yeah. So if you want to hear us discuss that, you should definitely subscribe, because we also discussed Frantz Fanon, Amilcar Cabral, and other stuff. So yeah, stay safe, take care of yourself, take care of yourselves,
and death to America.
All right, peace.
See ya.